Welcome back to My Inner Struggle, the podcast where we dive into stories that shape us, the experiences that transform us, and the courage it takes to walk through the unknown parts of ourselves. Today's episode is one I've been so excited to share. I'm joined by Eleanor Wagner, author, paranormal investigator, and fellow podcaster. She has published 6 books, including her popular Hauntings series, with 3 of them set right here in Sussex County. We talked about how she first began connecting with spirits, what drew her into paranormal investigation, and some of the most powerful and unexpected experiences she's had along the way. If you're someone who's ever wondered what lies beyond what we can physically see, you're in for a special treat. So grab a cup of coffee and come get uncomfortable with me. Hey, Eleanor, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So you are local here to Sussex County, and you are an author, paranormal investigator, and fellow podcaster. So it's so great to have this conversation with you, especially as we are in the spooky season. But if you want to tell us a little bit, I know that you've written other books. Do you want to tell us about those?
Sure. I've been writing ever since the 7th grade when my 7th grade teacher inspired that writing in me. And so it started out as poetry, and then I had these ideas. I was really very fond of Dean R. Koontz and Stephen King and John Saul. Those were my go-tos in my teenage years, and they were the ones that inspired me to write psychological thrillers and horror. So I had written that book, and I'd gone to school to write for children. So you think I'd be writing for children, and it didn't start out that way. I wrote my first psychological thriller and had these children's book ideas in my mind, but never went where with it because I got totally diverted with the Hauntings books. People just loved that and grabbed onto it. And so that's really what took off. So I am still writing psychological thrillers and I am writing children's books, but it's the Hauntings books that I've become known for.
So what first pulled you in when you decided to write your first Hauntings book?
I was at a writers group, and it was the Sussex Bards at the Sussex Main Library. And we always tossed around ideas to one another. Great group of people. Give a shout out to them. They're really lovely. Just somebody had mentioned, oh, I love like true hauntings. And I have seen spirits since I was a kid. And I've had plenty of experiences of my own. And then I owned a haunted shop on Main Street in Sussex. And personally, whenever I travel somewhere, I'm always looking for their local ghost lore.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite place other than Sussex County in New Jersey is Cape May. So you can't not go to Cape May and get a ghost book. So I thought, well, I have my own experiences to share. Let me just put it out on social media and see if there are people out there that have their own stories to tell that want to share it with me that might end up in a book. And so with the power of social media, I put it out there and my phone didn't stop dinging for weeks.
I can imagine,
And
actually. Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, this is great. I started compiling folders of hauntings in Pike County, hauntings in Warren County, hauntings in Morris County, and before I knew it, I had about 10 files of different stories from people from all of those different counties. Obviously, I haven't written all those books as of yet, but right now I'm working on Morris County hauntings. And I said, you know what? If these people want these stories, then I'm just going to give them to them. So I thought Sussex County hauntings was just going to be one book, but it ended up being 3, and I do have enough stories for a 4th one. So I got to kind of get one of those tests out there for people to say, do you want another Sussex County haunting books or do you want something else? Because they seem to really, really like them. But it led to paranormal investigating for me as well, because people had my information and reached out and said, I don't really have a story, but my house is haunted or my business is haunted. And can you bring a team in to do an investigation? And the very first time that happened, it was from a scientist who worked at the Sterling Hill mines in Ogdensburg. And he said, I'm a scientist and I'm not supposed to believe in any of this stuff, but my employees and I have all these things that have been happening to us for years now, and we can't explain it other than it's paranormal. Would you like to bring your paranormal team in for an investigation? And I was like, yeah, I would love that. Of course, I didn't have a team at the time. I just had friends that I had gone on investigations with, and a local team that had a function that I reached out to. And I said, do you guys want to come on this journey with me? And I got a group together, and that was our very first investigation at the Sterling Hill Mines. And from that investigation, we had such good stuff that we collected that I submitted it to Paranormal Caught on Camera. I don't know if you ever heard that program
I
before.
haven't, but that's cool.
Yeah, it's on TV. I don't know which it is, but I put out an email to them and they sent them the evidence and said, I don't know if you want to put it on your show. And they did. They put us in the program.
That's so
So,
cool.
yeah, yeah. So that was really fun. Our 15 minutes of fame.
So what kind of data, so if you're doing an investigation like this, like what kind of data are you collecting? Obviously pictures of any kind of video, but what else are you looking for?
Okay, the first thing that you do is you want to have people that, first and foremost, are sensitive to spirit. We all have that ability, but people grow it and have experienced it for years, so they learn how to tone it, hone in on it, and understand it and work with it. With me doing this for so many years, I've met so many intuitive people that some of them can hear spirits, some of them can see spirits, some of them can do both. I mean, there are different abilities that people have that really help for an investigation. And then you really would love to have somebody who is into the equipment, because if you have an equipment person that's, oh, I got this thing that works great, let's try this out, that's great. You want somebody that is really enthusiastic about that sort of thing. And then taking a camera, your phone camera is great for getting
Hmm.
audio equipment. A recorder is great because you'd be amazed when you get a voice on your audio equipment. I mean, I've been on investigations where it's just been us women and we get men's voices responding to us on the audio equipment, which is really, really cool when that happens. And everybody together that has all of these abilities, you'd be amazed at what you can pick up on an investigation. I mean, randomly, if one thing happens, we really kind of try and pull it apart and say whether it's legit or not. But if you've got something that happens with two or three or four of those people or their equipment, 90% of the time it's something that's paranormal. So I personally don't have the greatest abilities. Some of my team members are just amazing with what they can do, and I kind of lean on them to learn. And the more that you investigate with one another, the better you get at what you do.
Hmm.
I probably could have been better at what I do if I hadn't been so afraid when I was younger. I used to be able to predict stuff, which was crazy. And it started out really simple predictions. And then I had a really scary one that happened to me where I predicted the death of my godparents. And I think I was around 12 when that happened. And they would come to me in dreams. I would dream about it and I would wake up and I usually would tell my mom or my sister or somebody what I had dreamt, and then it would happen. And so I woke up from that particular incident. It was a nightmare, obviously. And my mom was like, oh, it was just a nightmare. It's not going to really happen. And then it did. And so I really kind of blamed myself. I mean, that doesn't sound logical, but for a kid, I could have done something about it. I couldn't have, but that was my head at the time. And
Right,
so
that's heavy. Yeah.
I kind of shut that part of me down. But I always knew that I loved to write, and I always knew that I could see spirit because I lived with a ghost in my house. And like I told you, I had a haunted shop, and we saw the resident ghost there. And so I knew there was something, I just didn't know what I was supposed to do with it. And so,
Hmm.
really, after I had written that first psychological thriller, was in the middle of writing my second one, and I was with the writing group, and we were talking about ghost stories. I think that was almost like that little voice in the head saying, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to write about, because there are so many people out there that want to tell their story. But more importantly, there are spirits that want to tell their story. And that was my goal. I'm going to tell this spirit story, and if I'm able to help that spirit move on, because some of them want to, some of them don't want to, but those that do, that makes it even better. You're helping them to move on from this plane. And
Hmm.
that kind of became my mission, and I was really happy with it. I still am happy doing things that way.
That's really neat. So when someone would come to you with the story or say that they wanted to share a story, did they typically had they done their own research, or did you start from scratch and start researching the history that, was paired with the story?
Some of them did, some of them didn't. Some of them were just like, this crazy thing happened to me, and if I felt like it was compelling enough to draw somebody's attention, or it would make it worth my while to find out the history of the place, that's when I would go with it. I mean, you hear so many stories that, oh, I heard, we hear footsteps in the house. I mean, how many
Hmm.
stories are appealing that it's just a footstep? But if you've got like a history of something that happened there, and then it's more than just footsteps, or if these people interact with this spirit, like I've had stories where people interacted with the spirits in their homes.
Hmm.
I mean, one that comes to mind was that this family lived in this house for something like 30 years with the spirit of, there was more than one spirit, but this one particular one, the woman was like really attached to the family and the household. When they were up to retirement age and their kids were full grown and out of the house, they finally were like, this house is too big for us, so we're going to sell. And they had gotten to the point where they were talking to this woman's spirit and saying, we are going to be leaving. And that last day that they were in that house, the spirit was so annoyed with them, she was shaking their bed with them in it. And
That's crazy.
and it broke their hearts too, because they didn't want to leave her, but they had no choice. They weren't going to stay in this house. It was a retired couple that I think had like 4 or 5 bedrooms, right? So, and the story didn't stop there, because they move out, and these people did this couple buys the house, and they go to move into it, and all of this crazy stuff happens, because I think the spirit at that point was like pissed.
Hmm.
They didn't want to believe it. They kind of like were not into it at all, and they were not believing it. And that's it. We don't believe in you, kind of thing. And that made the spirit even angrier. So she started doing some crazy things around the house to annoy the people that lived there. And so much that they moved out of the house onto the property in a trailer and rented out the house. And then everybody that they rented out the house to started having stuff happening to them. So where this one simple story started, I put it out on social media and said, I have this location. I'm trying to find out if anybody else had any stories. And boom, 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 I started getting connection. We rented this house and this happened to us. And we rented it and this happened to us. And I was like, wow, now there's a story that I could write about, because you have the family that the spirit loved that moved away. And then she wasn't happy. And then she wasn't very nice to the people that lived there afterwards. And it was all because they didn't want to believe her. It was pretty cool. So
That's interesting.
now the people that live in the house, they say they don't have any activity. I don't know if I want to believe it, but she might just be happy that there's a family with kids living in there now. So that's why she's probably not active. Although I don't really believe it when they tell me that they're not experiencing anything. They just don't want to bring attention to it.
Right, right. Yeah. Because then it makes it a reality, right?
I did find out that the spirit of the woman was actually somebody who was like from the 1800s, and she was hanging clothes on the line, and the line was wire, and there was a thunderstorm, and she got struck by lightning through, and that's how she ended up dying. And she was like in her 30s, this woman, when she died. So she was kind of like in the prime of her life. She left behind a husband, and I think maybe children too. About that, I'm not 100% sure. But they actually had an article in one of the local papers that I found out, and that's how we ended up finding out that she was the spirit that was in the house. But there were other spirits in the house, but she was the main one that interacted with the family. And
Crazy.
with sharing their names and they didn't mind. That's another thing, you want to make sure that otherwise you got to change the names, and sometimes they don't want to know the exact location either, because they don't want people ringing their door.
Right. Yeah. That I was reading something I was coming across on social media on Facebook like a couple weeks ago about a particular house in Morris County, and there were so many stories after it. And of course, it was late, and I was like, why am I reading this right now? Because I'm kind of a scaredy cat, to be honest. I love Halloween. It's like one of my favorites. I love things that are spooky, but I kind of scared. Have you ever been really freaked out when you're hearing about like a story, or if you were writing about something?
No, I don't think I've ever been. No, I'm more afraid of like a scary movie, or if I wake up in the middle of the night on my own and I just feel like there's something there. Because I've had spirits with me at night, and
Hmm.
most of the time it's a deceased loved one. Other than that, when you don't know something and you wake up and you feel like something's there, that freaks me out. That's the part.
Okay.
But I haven't had any really scary stories when we've done investigations. There was only one that somebody had shared with me, and it didn't happen to me, so it didn't really affect me. And then this other one, when we were on an investigation, I was with a whole bunch of mediums, and the spirit was just nasty and just didn't want people in the house. And the family was worried because now they were renting out the house to a young couple with a child, and they did not want anything to happen to the child. And
Hmm.
this spirit was in the habit of trying to force people down the stairs. So the last thing you want to have a child be forced down the stairs, like shoved down the stairs. So when somebody shares a story with me, if my paranormal team gets in to go and do an investigation, I don't tell the team members what I know because I want to see if they pick up on what's going on. And so this way we kind of legitimize it with the family too. Like they're there during the investigation. So they hear the team members say, oh my gosh, somebody just tried to push me down the stairs, that kind of
Right.
thing. So we all felt there was a bona fide spirit that did not want people there and wasn't being nice. So two of the women at the time were able to, they were house cleansers. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but they can go in and they can remove an unhealthy spirit and lock them out. And so there's no guarantee that it's going to work, but you'll know if it works if you don't feel the spirit anymore. And in that instance, they were able to get the spirit out and lock the house. So the woman was confident allowing the couple to move in with their child. And then when I checked in on them a few months later, she said everything was great. They hadn't had any incidences. But when that kind of thing happens, I always wonder if it was in a neighborhood where they kind of like track houses and all the houses kind of looked the same. Kind of, what did they say? Sears and Roebuck catalog houses from, I think it was the 20s or the 30s. And so every house looked the same. And in my head, I'm thinking, you're closing the spirit out of this one house. Is it just going to hop into another? So I was always curious to hear if I would have somebody contact me and say, "Oh my gosh, I live right next door to that house or on the same block, and we have a spirit in our house that's pushing people down the stairs." I've never had it happen, but I'm wondering if I ever will have somebody come back and say, "Oh my gosh, we live in that same neighborhood," or something similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't really think about that. Lack of experience more than anything, I'm thinking that they wouldn't be able to leave, or once the house is cleaned, they've kind of like moved on, right? And not necessarily relocate, but I guess that's always possible.
Yeah. Well, when you say move on, you mean into the light?
Yeah, like
They have to want to go into the light. They have to want to go into the light. Most of them are stuck here because of personal reasons. Most of them didn't want to leave their family, don't realize their family is not there anymore, or unfinished business, or a tragedy that's kept them behind, or possessions like materialism. It has a lot to do with them too, not wanting to leave their things. So there are different reasons why they get stuck here. Children, because they just didn't realize they were dead, which is the saddest of all when you have children's spirits and you try and help them cross over. But you try with the mediums, not me personally, because I don't have those abilities, but some of my team members do. And you talk to them about the light. I mean, I can talk to them about the light too. I'll say there's a light, and if you go there, it's all happiness. Other things that keep them behind are too fear of being rejected or fear of being ridiculed. Like you have people that suffered here in life because of who they were, or Catholic guilt kept them stuck here. They don't want to go because they're afraid they're going to be rejected. And so
interesting.
to just make them realize that that's an earthly emotion that has nothing to do with heaven. Heaven is all love and accepting, and you're not going to have to deal with that sort of thing. So that usually helps them to move on. But then you have those that just don't want to go. They just don't want to go. Like when we did that investigation I was telling you earlier about at the mines, there were so many deaths in those mines back in the day, and there's like this camaraderie going on with these men that died in the mines, and they don't want to leave their brothers behind.
Right.
Even there was a great many of them that would love to move into the light to be with their loved ones, they won't leave because they don't want to leave the brothers behind that don't want to go.
That's
And
interesting.
it's that was really sad because I mean, in a way it's heartbreaking because you feel so bad that they have this attachment to one another, and you could, if they would just all go, it would be so much better, for them, but
Right, right.
they won't do it.
What is the kind of craziest conversation that you've ever had with anyone, that whether it's their story or that communication? Like what was that?
But there are, all of them are just so cool, all of them. When you talk to somebody who's just sensitive to spirit and they're constantly hearing these things and try and shut it off, that's really interesting. Or you talk to somebody who just was not a believer at all and this just suddenly happened to them. I think the ones that touch me the most are the visits from deceased loved ones, because we can go to an investigation because somebody's got a spirit in there and they want to know who it is or how can they communicate with this spirit so that they could live amicably with each other, or the spirit doesn't know why these people are in their place and we try to make the spirit understand that the house is not yours anymore, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Really interesting. But when we're in the middle of an investigation and all of a sudden this deceased loved one steals that moment to try and reach their loved one and let them know we're here and we're always with you, and then you hear the voice on the audio equipment, or they do something that, what they tell us something that only that individual will understand or know, and then the person starts crying because it's like, how do you know that? That just makes me just like, because I've had
Yeah.
this through, and it just makes me feel really close to them again and know that they're okay and I'll see them again someday. But to see and listen to this person who just wasn't expecting it, that those are the stories that really, really touch me, because it's like, wow,
Yeah.
they came through and they let them know they're here, and just the people are so happy when they can connect that way with their loved ones.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that, quite honestly. I just had this conversation with somebody last week that I hadn't seen in a while, and we were talking about all of this stuff. And I think it had actually been after we spoke, and I said that we were going to be doing this podcast.
Mhm.
And the one time I felt like my dad passed away when I was 18, and it was probably like a year later. That was the one time that I really felt his presence was that long ago. It was 25 years ago. But I remember I was in my apartment and I just felt something. And I kind of just said out loud, I'm really not ready to see you right now. And it
Oh,
hadn't, and nothing happened for years and years and years until just a few years ago that I felt like I reconnected with him. But I don't know how that would go about. And now since then, I've lost my mother as well 10 years ago. And so I've thought about that and I've never really, I don't know if I'm really ready to see them or speak with them, but I know that people are sometimes desperate to connect with, their
yeah.
loved ones that have passed.
It's
And
not, I
it's
don't think,
so,
for everybody. And
right.
I had a much closer relationship with my mom than I did my dad. But in the last few months of my dad's life, because he was an immigrant and happy to be in America and got that job that he worked at Amtrak for all those years, and he couldn't wait for his retirement. And he retired in January, was diagnosed with cancer in February, gone by June. I mean, that's how. And so I still remember, him being so angry. Even while he had the cancer and was going through the chemo, he was just so angry because he worked so hard his whole life. And he was all about, like putting food on the table for the family. And you guys are going to graduate high school. He was just happy if we graduated high school and get a job, because you have to make sure you have a job to take care of your families. And my mom was the nurturer. She was
Hmm.
the one there for us day in and day out. And so when my father got sick and when he died, I mean, I was the one that started saying, I love you, Dad. I love you. I knew he was going to be gone, and I wanted to know that I loved him and was thankful to him for everything that he did. And so I was living in Sussex County at the time, and he was still in the Bronx. And this is where he was with my mom. And my mom gave me a call on the phone. She's like, no, my sister calls, and she says, "Listen, I don't, Dad's back in the hospital, and I don't think he's going to make it." And so I'm like getting ready to, oh my God, really? And my mom gets on the phone. My mom's like, "No, no, no, no. I'm sure he's going to be fine. I have no doubt that he's going to go through this again and he'll be fine again tomorrow." So like I'm thinking, what do I do? My mom said, just wait until tomorrow morning. We've been through this before. If it's happened before, he'll be fine. So I ended up waiting until the next morning. And it was like the hottest day of June, I remember. And I was on the George Washington Bridge and I was stuck in bumper to bumper traffic trying to get to the Bronx. And I remember my dad's voice in my head, turn off the air conditioning. You don't want the car to overheat. So I turn off the air conditioning and I unwind the window. And all of a sudden, I feel like I'm watching a drive-in movie in front of me. And there's my dad. walking through this mist, and I could feel all his emotions. He was angry and sad and just all negativity, right? And he walks up to this person that meets him at this place, and it ends up being my husband's aunt who had died the year before. And she's like, "Hi, Carl. How are you? Come on in. I have others that want to meet you." And he's like now confused, and he walks with her into this group of lighted beings. And I couldn't see who they were. I just knew who they were because he knew who they were. They were his deceased brothers, his deceased sisters, his best friend who had died the year before. And they all come over and they envelop him and embrace him. "Hey, Carl." And then all of a sudden he had a smile from ear to ear. So all those negative emotions that he was feeling were gone. And my dad really didn't smile. I have a picture hanging in my bedroom of him smiling with me in his arms on my wedding day because he just never really smiled.
Yeah.
There he was smiling from ear to ear. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's gone. And then they separated, and this other cherubic looking woman comes up to him and she embraces him and she goes, "Hi, Daddy, it's me, Caroline, my sister who passed away." And she was meeting him in heaven. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. So here I am in the car in bumper to bumper traffic on the George Washington Bridge, bawling my eyes out. And people are looking at me like I'm crazy. And, native New Yorkers, they're not going to say, "Oh, are you okay?" No, nobody asked me if I was okay.
Right.
Finally get through the traffic and get to the house, and my sisters and my mom are on the porch, and they're like, "He's gone." I'm like, "I know. He told me." And so I had this great story to share about him getting into heaven with everybody at his funeral and his wake. And that's the story I was telling over and over again. But that I hold that dear to my heart, that he let me know I'm okay, right? So the last person I would have thought was going to come to me would have been my dad. And when my mom died, I was like waiting and waiting and waiting. I'm like, "Why aren't you coming, Mom?" And she just didn't. And it was several years. I mean, later, I'm struggling with something with one of my kids because I have two daughters, and teenage kids, they can be. And I'm having this moment and I'm crying. I'm like, I wish I had my mother or my mother-in-law here to help me tell me whether I'm doing the right thing or not with this kid, right? I get one of the team members calling me up or texting me. I think she texted me and said, "Call me when you're on your way to work tomorrow," because it was probably late at night and she wasn't going to call me because she knew I had to get up in the morning. "Call me while you're on your way to work." So I'm like, okay. So I call her on my way to work and she says, "Listen, I was meditating." And she said, "And stuff came through for you." And she said, "I got names. I never get names. And I want, to share it with you. And you can tell me whether it rings true with you somewhere if you know who the heck it is." And I go, "Okay. Well, what'd you get?" She said, "Well, I had these three women," and she had rambled off like Rose is hanging out with, and I do have family members that are those names, but Julia, I'm like, wasn't really like, but she said the main women, this one woman who was there, and her name was Erna, Erna. How many people do you know with the name Erna?
I don't think I know any.
That's my mom. And this woman didn't know my mom's name. And I'm like, "What did you say?" "You're doing okay and everything's going to come out fine." I had to pull over to the side of the road
That's
because
incredible.
I started crying, right? And so I said, "Well, who was the other lady? You said there were two main people." She said, "Yeah, there was this other woman that was standing right next to her and kind of had her hand on her shoulder and was nodding to everything that was going on. And her name was Agnes." How many people do you know with the name Agnes? And that was my mother-in-law. And I was like, holy cow. Okay, all right, Mom, I hear you. Thank you for coming. I really needed to hear that at that point in my life. And there was my mom telling me, "You're doing okay. Everything's going to be fine."
That's so
So
interesting. And it
I,
wasn't like a reach out directly to you either.
no, no, they
So,
knew
yeah,
that I was going to get it from her somehow. I don't. Maybe she was trying, and I just wasn't getting. I don't know.
right.
I just don't know. I mean, now she comes to me in dreams, and now it's fine. But maybe there was a blockage, or I don't know. I don't know. But my mother-in-law was another one. When she was alive, she was like, "If I can come and tell you when I'm around after I die, I will let you know." And both my dad and my mother-in-law always come to me in birds, and I always knew that they would. They always said they would come through the birds. But my mother-in-law, the night that she died too, she said she was going to let me know. She let me know. Crazy enough. My mom
That,
took so long. that. It was just so, it's so weird. But I really tell everybody, just receive it and accept it. I mean, I know it might be hard for some people, but they are with us all the time. And you can ask for random signs and they'll give it to you. My mom comes to me in hummingbirds too. Everybody's different. Some people get them in coins, dragonflies, butterflies. Everybody's got their thing. People see them in clouds. You know, they can take a picture of a cloud and can't you see them? Can't you see them? And you may not be able to see them, but it really doesn't matter if you or I see them. It matters if they can see it. And if they can see it in the clouds, then that message is just meant for them. You know,
Right,
and that's
right,
people going, oh, I don't see anything there. It doesn't matter if you see it. They see it. It's their message from their loved one.
right.
And that matters is that you're receiving it and accepting it, you know?
Yeah, that's incredible. Wow, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So you started in Sussex County. Sussex County was the first hauntings book that you wrote. Is that right?
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I lived in Essex County, so it made sense, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's so cool. I grew up here in Sussex County. I've lived here my whole life. So I'm really fan that you even did that. I think that's so cool. So there are four hauntings books. Is that right?
Yes, currently there is Sussex County Hauntings 1, Sussex County Hauntings 2, and Sussex County Hauntings 3. I do have other strange phenomena chapters in there because people wanted to talk about Big Red
Hmm.
Eye, Bigfoot, and flying saucers. They wanted to talk about UFOs, so I have those chapters in there too. I have the stories about visits from deceased loved ones because they're not ghosts; those are spiritual
Hmm.
visits. And then the Warren County Hauntings one, I just was going to take a break from Sussex County because there were such great stories about Warren County. And so that's why I ended up writing that book. And so now I'm on the Morris County Hauntings book. I'm throwing some Sussex County in there too.
Yeah, that's so cool. So where locally, where can everybody find your book? Because I know that you're in a number of local bookstores.
I am. I'm on Broad Street Books. I'm their bestseller there. And Black Dog Books. I'm the bestseller there. I'm in the Daily Bean. She has me there because they're haunted and their building is haunted.
That is like one of the oldest buildings in Sussex County, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah. I
it is.
hosted a few workshops there and it's
It's
really
huge.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I had stories that went back to the 60s for that chapter. So she's got the books in there, Witchy Ways, Denville Cigar. So they're kind of all in local places around the surrounding counties. The Cellar Door's got the Warren counties. Inflorescence has got the Warren counties. So you could pretty much the Sussex Coffee Company has
Yeah.
street in Sussex is really haunted. And Taco of the Town used to carry the books, but she sold the business out. Sussex Coffee open, they were like, we want to carry the books. So they have the books there. But I'm also available in ebook and paperback on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and you just stick my name in, my page will come up and you'll see all the books that I got. The Dream a Little Dream psychological thriller, though, takes place in Sussex County. I used Sussex County as my inspiration to put local um, roads and places in Sussex County in that story. Because I lived there for over 30 years myself. So even though I was
That's
born and raised in the
awesome.
county was my home, you know? So
I am so looking forward to digging in and freaking myself out and reading some of these stories. But I'm so glad that we had got to have this conversation, and I definitely would like to connect again.
thank you so much for having me. I really
Thanks for listening to this episode with Eleanor Wagner. Her stories remind us that there's more happening around us and within us than meets the eye. If you love this conversation, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you're feeling brave, leave a review and let me know your own unexplained experience. As always, I'm thinking of you and sending you love, and I will see you soon.